School dress codes for LGBTQ students. How much can they really enforce, and what are your legal rights? With kids going back to school recently, we thought it was an important time to not only remind schools how to be more LGBTQ inclusive with our previous episode a few weeks ago, but today remind students of their legal rights when it comes to how they can express themselves. And to do this best, we're going to break this topic down into 4 categories: sexual orientations, gender identities, special events, and self-expression. First, let's say you're a bisexual, gay, lesbian, asexual, or anything other than straight child, and your public or private school just handed you the dress code you apparently need to follow. Now, while private schools do have far more power over what they can require you to wear or not wear, overall, federal law protects you here from your school being extremely discriminatory. Under federal regulations, you are in fact allowed to wear wristbands, accessories, and so on that express your point of view. For example, schools cannot ban you from wearing rainbows, pride symbols, and slogans, nor can they ban you from wearing LGBTQ, feminist, political, or identity messages, and so on. Back in 1969, the case of Tinker versus Des Moines went before the Supreme Court, which ruled that students had a constitutional right to wear clothing expressing political viewpoints. This ruling included wearing clothing that endorses or criticizes a politician, or clothing which endorses gay and trans rights. Ever since then, as a general rule, schools cannot ban you from wearing clothing simply because they disapprove of the message that clothing conveys. However, schools can prohibit you from wearing clothing with indecent or other messages that may cause a disruption. Now, you might assume that your school principal has the right to determine what they think is indecent or a message that may cause a disruption. But back in 1972, a case between Gardner versus Cumberland School Committee solved this issue. That case resulted in school districts being limited to regulate the dress code of pupils to situations where, quote, it presents a clear and present danger to the student's health and safety, causes an interference with schoolwork, or creates a classroom or school disorder, all of which your school would have to prove in a courtroom if it ever came to that. When it comes to gender expression for trans and non-binary individuals, the law is very clear for schools to follow. Schools can have a dress code, but federal law says that dress codes cannot legally treat boys and girls differently, nor can those dress codes force students to conform to sex stereotypes or censor particular viewpoints. For example, your public or private school can require that skirts must be a certain length, but your school cannot legally say only females are allowed to wear skirts. This means if you are a transgender girl and want to wear a skirt, maybe your school still claims you are a boy, or maybe they are dead naming you as such, you still have federal laws protecting you here to wear a skirt and to wear the appropriate clothing to match your gender expression with your gender identity. Furthermore, under federal law, dress codes have to be gender neutral on paper and must be enforced equally. For example, your school can have what is referred to as a revealing clothing rule. This might include a rule which bans students from wearing a tank top, but schools cannot enforce this rule only against women. Basically speaking, if the school doesn't allow women to wear something, men aren't allowed to wear it either, under federal sex discrimination laws. And under federal law, schools cannot enforce any rule, dress code or otherwise, more harshly on certain groups of people, such as targeting transgender individuals or students of color. Very basically, if you are transgender, you can simply follow the rules set by your school for your gender identity. As long as you follow those rules, your school cannot legally force you to dress against your gender identity under United States federal law. If you're a male to female trans child, you can wear a dress. If you're a female to male trans child, you can wear boy clothes all you want to. When it comes to special events such as prom, homecoming, graduation, and other school events, schools cannot require students to dress in attire consistent with traditional gender norms. Under federal law, all students are allowed to wear clothing aligning with their gender identity and expression. Your school is legally allowed to set general rules for events like school dances and prom. For example, they can legally require students attending a formal event to wear a tuxedo or a dress, but they are not allowed to require certain students to wear one or the other. They cannot require females to wear a dress, nor males to wear a tuxedo. Now, courts have sometimes found that a school's concern about safety or disruption is valid, and have sometimes ruled in favor of schools upholding sex-specific dress codes. But again, under federal law, your school would have to prove in a courtroom that you wearing a dress or a suit and tie was disruptive to everyone at the dance and caused a safety issue. So, in other words, if you are transgender, just look on the dress code to see what your gender identity can wear according to those rules, and follow those rules to a T, and you should be fine. For example, if you're a trans woman and you see dresses are allowed at the dance, then go ahead and wear that dress. If your school infringes on these rights for transgender individuals, it would subject your school to legal liability, as their actions would be setting in motion sex discrimination claims under state education laws, anti-discrimination laws, and most importantly, a violation of the First Amendment right to free speech and violations of Title IX of the U.S. Constitution, stating that no person shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Finally, let's cover self-expression. You should know that when it comes to jewelry, ear piercings, and hair length, court rulings have sort of been all over the place. Most times they are considered on a case-by-case basis. In other words, you are perfectly fine to wear rainbows, express your pride on your clothing and wristbands, and so on. As a trans girl, you're perfectly allowed to wear a dress to school, and for a trans boy, you're allowed to wear boy clothes all you want to. But whether you can wear jewelry to match that outfit, get your ears pierced, or cut your hair to an appropriate length to match your gender expression to your gender identity sadly depends on the situation. The good news is, under federal law, you still have freedom of speech. So if you wanted, you can tell others you are a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, queer, intersex, asexual, aromantic, and so on. Or talk about the LGBTQ community as much as you'd like. Your school cannot stop you from talking about these things at recess, in the school lunchroom, or on school grounds, as long as you're not in a class and disrupting a lecture by your teacher. Everything you say is protected under your freedom of speech. Now again, you have to follow other school rules of not cursing and so on, but telling others your sexual orientation or gender identity, or even talking about LGBTQ topics, are protected under federal law. But that brings up a good question. What if your school goes against anything I just mentioned? What if they break federal laws and discriminate against you anyway? Well, that's when you contact the amazing lawyers at either ACLU at aclu.org or Lambda Legal at lambdalegal.org, who will evaluate your case and, if needed, help you take your case to court for free or for reduced cost. They can help you sue the school district in criminal and civil court if need be. That way you can not only protect your rights, but possibly get paid for dealing with the discrimination your school just placed on you. Please remember that under federal regulations, you are also allowed to start a Gender Sexuality Alliance club to bring together LGBTQ students and allies into a club to learn and network with one another. And if you want some awesome rainbow shirts to wear to school, you can always find Pride designs on the PBR merchandise store linked down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm your host, Professor Pride. Have a gay day, everyone, and bye for now.